Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have a new friend with us today. Her name is Shirin Etessam. She's an entrepreneur, a seasoned media executive. She's a transformational speaker. She has created some incredible projects across many different platforms. She's a proud member of the LGBTQIA+ community. She founded OML TV, which is a popular platform dedicated to streaming and curating quality queer female video content. And OML Originals, which is a female-led production company telling diverse female stories through a vast spectrum of film and television genres. You contribute regularly to various different magazines and journals, but the reason we're here today is to talk about your latest book, which is called Free to Be. And this is a 6-week program, and I chose to have you here because I really like the succinct simplicity of this book, and I do think it's going to help many, many people. I'd love to walk us through briefly the contents of the book, if I can have your permission to do so.
Yes, please, and thank you for having me on your show.
Of course, of course. So the 6-week program is really over 6 weeks, and the first week, number 1, is about detoxing your brain. And I would love for you to briefly teach and share with our listener what actually we are detoxing when we start this program from our minds.
Yeah, so there is, I talk about, a great deal in that chapter, but I start with that chapter because I believe that our mind is our biggest culprit, our biggest saboteur in life and in what we do and how we behave and what we believe in. So there's a lot of talk about mindfulness, but not many people really know how to truly detox their mind. So I kind of walk them through that process. And beyond the idea of meditating and being present and such, I talk a considerable amount about really choosing what we allow in. We are on screens from the time we wake up till the time we sleep, at least most of us, and we consume a tremendous amount of content. And it is really up to us to figure out what that is. I call it mental junk food. But mental junk food can also come in other forms like gossip. It doesn't necessarily have to be screen related. So I think that it is really important to mind what it is that is entering our brains while we are learning how to be mindful and present, because they all work together.
Thank you for that. The second week, once we're able to sort of clear the decks in the mind, as it were, and reading through this book, I was made aware of a few things that I was doing that just don't serve me in terms of occupying my mind instead of being present for other things. So I want to thank you for that. Second week is a heart detox. And I like how you talk about the heart as kind of a beautiful child, while a completely magical, magnificent being shouldn't actually be trusted to lead the family on a hike, for example. And I would love for you to sort of expound on this, why and what we're detoxing from the heart.
Well, using your hiking analogy, if you allowed your child, so say a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, you'd be like, hey, lead the way. So it's either going to, go whichever direction is the shiny object. It may sit there and say, I don't wanna. It may run off far faster than you can actually catch up with it. That is a child, right? A child is in the present moment feeling whatever it is that it's feeling. And that is really, really important. So the heart feels all the feels, and those feelings are really important to acknowledge and tend to and care for. And that is truly the only job of the heart, which is to have you walk through this life feeling all the feels, but to look to it for wisdom, I believe that is misassigned, because that's truly the work of the soul.
Got it. I like this distinction between the heart and the soul, and I look forward to sort of exploring this a little more deeply as we go. Week 3, detoxing the body, how we relate to it, how we tend to it, the idea that self-care isn't selfish. Talk to us a little bit about how that gets curated, this clearing the body.
Yeah, so this chapter, and obviously it's a very important part of the heart, body, mind, and soul collaboration partnership. And I feel like there are so many books written on the body and physical well being, and all of those things are really important. But the main point of that chapter is really shifting our relationship with our bodies as our only vessels through this life, because we tend to either ignore our bodies. I mean, unless you're an athlete, but if you are an executive, you may overwork, you may not get enough sleep, you may stress eat, and not just an executive, but anybody who is not concentrating specifically on their body as a profession. We tend to either ignore it or treat it poorly. So much of the chapter talks about shifting that perspective, and it's really important to acknowledge it for what it is, and again, not for what it's not. So it does not matter how much spiritual work one does if one is ill. And yes, there is definitely connection between heart, body, mind, but no matter how much spiritual work you do, if you have an illness, that illness needs to be tended to directly. One does not take care of the other. They're connected. And I think that often when people get into the work of self-discovery, there is this kind of spiritual bypassing that happens that is like, okay, well, I'm just going to find my higher self and the rest will work itself out. It doesn't really work that way. The body needs tending the same way that the heart and the mind need tending separately. So beyond the sleeping well, eating well, exercising, and all the other, and I speak about those on the chapter, it's not just a shift in perception, but it's an honoring of the body,
Yeah.
which I don't think that we do.
No, it's certainly not. I mean, it's talked about in certain circles, but it's not something that we have as a natural practice. It's not something we're taught as children. So I liked that this was brought up. Week 4 is about play. Play like your life depends on it, because it does. What is play? Adults can play too. The role of play in neuroscience and neuroplasticity. I'm just rolling our listener through the table of contents. It's awesome in here. Talk to us a little bit about what you learned regarding play and neuroplasticity.
Well, what's really interesting is, frankly, what I learned once the book was published. In speaking with people who read the book, pretty unanimously, chapter 4 has been their favorite. And it's very telling. I mean, so much so that I now speak regularly on the subject, and I'm leading workshops on the subject of play by and for adults, specifically to companies and corporations. which has been really, really fascinating. So I discovered play in my darkest moments, and I did so somewhat accidentally, but during the early years of my self-discovery, I had friends, specifically one friend who I started playing with. And when I say playing, I mean like we would go out and do really, really silly things. And I wasn't necessarily thinking I am playing, but one day the thought hit me like, I'm playing the way I played when I was like 5 years old. And when did I stop playing? And so I started looking into it, and there is a considerable amount of research and studies that have been done on the brain, play, and neuroplasticity, and how it truly rewires the brain. There's a famous quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it says that it usually takes about 400 repetitions for the mind to truly learn a new skill. But through play, it only takes 20 to 30 repetitions. So once we begin playing, the mind literally opens up and begins reforming. So, what better way of creating new habits than through play? In the chapter, I also talk about there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Stuart Brown, and he founded the National Institute for Play. I actually interviewed him yesterday after we had met many years ago, and I interviewed him again yesterday, and he's a lovely man and has a wonderful TED Talk too, if you get a chance to watch it. But he wrote a book on play, and he's kind of known as the godfather of play. And he has distinguished 8 different play personalities. And that is really important in that in order to play and to play effectively, it's good to know your play personality and then choose the activities, and I won't deep dive into that, but play then begins to look very different. I think most people, adults, think of it as something frivolous, but once you see it as a key factor in mental and spiritual wellness, the perception of play shifts and you can't unknow it then. So that chapter particularly is fascinating and very close to my heart. I mean, the entire book is close to my heart, but that chapter is, I think, the heart of the heart.
And his name again in the book's title?
As Dr. Stuart Brown, it's called Play, and I can't remember the tagline right now.
But the book is called Play.
Yes.
Cool. Great. Week 5. Find your true north. Finding your soul in a soul-deprived world. So I'll preface this by saying that here on the Practice You podcast, I really aim to bring this to the forefront. Like, how close can we get to the soul and the heart of things? How deep can we go? How loving can we be? How fiercely compassionate can we be? Tell us about, for you, why this is so important and what to do when our typical practices of bypassing the soul cease working.
Well, I think that first and foremost, definition and distinction are really important. And I make that fairly clear in that chapter. You know, people use the soul and spirit interchangeably. And for me, they are very, very distinct. Our souls are our unique signatures in the world. So, my soul, there is no other soul like it in the world, and for all I know, in the universe. And yours is incredibly unique. And there are, 8 billion plus other unique souls in this world. And there's a real beauty to that because then you realize how magical you are. that there is a reason why your makeup is entirely different than the next. Obviously, as humans, we share a great deal, but no two humans, no two snowflakes are alike. And that is gorgeous. And then there is the spirit. You could call it God, you could call it Jesus, Allah, universal consciousness. It's the energy that connects us all. And I believe that the work of self transformation, self evolution, is really learning the dance between the soul and spirit.
So beautifully said. Thank you. Never really thought about that in exactly that way. The final week here is week 6, rewriting your story, stripping away all that is not you, finding your raison d'etre, talking about ikigai, your purpose here on this planet. Talk to us a little bit about how you sort of found your raison d'etre and stripped away what wasn't you to become who you are now, creating such a ripple in this very hungry world, hungry for truth.
Yeah, I mean, my process of finding my raison d'etre, my ikigai, was super, super sloppy. And I don't know if I had found my ikigai earlier, if somebody had presented the Venn diagram to me, if it would have resonated the same way as it did when I did find it, because I felt that I was really ready for it. And the reason that I include it in there is because it's really important for me that the work that we do is super practical. Like when things get into the realm of the woo woo, and I really tried not to make the book too woo woo. I mean, the chapter 5 is probably as woo woo as I get. I wanted it to be practical because unless it is experience, unless it is interwoven into the fabric of our lives in the here and now, then it becomes something conceptual and something that you visit, if you go to a retreat and such. But it doesn't have those lasting effects. So that's the reason for having the actual Ikigai Venn diagram. And I think that it is so well structured and succinct. Truly, there's nothing really woo woo about it. You really combine what you are good at with what you're passionate about, with what the world needs, with what you can make money at, and you find your ikigai.
And just for our listener, I just want to make sure that you understand. Ikigai is spelled Ikigai. It's a Japanese term, and it really gets to the heart of like your purpose for being on this planet alive at this time. So that's the word that we're referencing here when we say that, or en français, raison d'être, reason for being.
Yeah, and frankly, that's what we're usually left with people are like, well, find what is really true for you, find your raison d'etre, but very few people say how. Right? So ikigai is your how. And I found it to be really profound and lasting. So, in rewriting your story, and that also, it's interesting because when I went through my big life event over a decade ago, people would be like, on to the next chapter. And I was like, I don't want another chapter. I want an entirely new book. So how do you go about? Some people may not need that. Some people may just need, an adjustment or a optimization. For me, it was an overhaul. And Ikigai just was such a clean and beautiful way to do it. And I revisit it. It's not that my life is written and, it's unfolding beautifully, as in I truly feel like I'm in my flow, but I do tweak, things that aren't working and all of that. But as far as knowing my life's purpose, I'm right there. And hopefully readers will feel the same.
Thank you for that. It's been a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for the simplicity and care with which you have approached this 6-week guide. Free to Be is the book. Shirin Etessam is the author. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Shirin, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I've enjoyed the dialogue.
Thank you.